So I'm just saying that I'm a self-taught guy. When it came to world affairs, I did go to the university to study political sciences. I did do 4 semesters. But I found out soon that they were basically, and I was then by then already an intelligence officer, I figured they're just preparing us to become diplomats, to become part of the system. And the higher military guys, as odd as it sounds, they told me, you don't want to be a system guy. You need to do your own thing. So even economics and world affairs and politics I have to teach myself. And so the best way to be taught, but this came by chance, I didn't plan this, was that I met some guys. I mentioned some names in the book. And I was then young, 35, 37, 40. They kind of felt, yeah, he'll understand, so they started talking to me, and I could ask them questions, and so sooner or later I had a lot of sources talking to me. Some became clients, because then eventually I was practicing astrology in the way that I could advise a client when he should do what I would advise to do, or if she should sell the shop, or if she, etc. Right? So I could basically guide a life. Which that put a lot of responsibility on me, by the way. I became aware that I'm the guy who's taking out the decisions, and Krishna said, that's no. So I had to give that power over and say, the decision is all yours. I just say, if it looks good timing-wise or not. It's a delicate work when you have to actually, we were talking about remote viewing last night, you were not here, but when you actually go into the time and intervene in the spot, that's tricky stuff. So you can only do it in cooperation with the person, and the person has to know we're going to try to change the situation and make the situation better, or just transform a situation. Change and transformation that's something we all have difficulties with, because we get used to a situation, we try to be okay in the situation, but something tells us this isn't really the best situation, we need to move over to something else. Changing situations is a very delicate business, but the best has been, in my experience, we need to change on our free will before external events are going to push us into a change that we no longer are in charge of. So that's kind of my work, that's what I do. And then, to finish a little bit my story, I published a few books, which Zenzu, who is here, edited and published. And those books, particularly Light Seeds, the big book, was basically, if I had made a university degree, that would be it, right? That would be the, the thesis, whatever you call it. And then I had to go back into practice. That took me about 10 years to research and write and publish. And then I thought, okay, now we're going to do something about it. I had given the solution in the book. I'm going to jump now through the hoops with you quickly. We had figured out that this world is going to present us some challenges. Not problems necessarily, but challenges. There are going to be situations coming up, external situations in public affairs, politics, geopolitics, economics, etc., which would require us to adapt, preferably early to it. So I guess we're visited not only by the spaceships that are above us, there's a presence, but also hearing helicopter sound.
Where can turn off your GPS?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, if I was Edward Snowden, I would have now asked you to put all your gear into the fridge. We're aware that we're being looked at from outside and stuff, and that's fine. There's nothing here to hide. Sorry. Although there's nothing to hide is not the argument. I'm all for letting them know, because I feel the challenges that we have coming, we're in the challenges. They began in 2008, and my book came out in 2006, just in time for the beginning of the challenges. The things I suggested in my book, the big one, and a little bit in the small summary that I gave you, is that sometimes these changes and internal transformation, they can come like this. In a dream, you get up in the morning, you know exactly, okay, this is what has to happen. And that's ideal. I can tell you, if you can in 5 minutes figure it out, that's better. Others may need 5 years, 10 years, because it's internal education, studying, becoming aware of what's going on around us, in yourself. I insist to always say that it's an internal thing. Most readers and people who read our work said, okay, where do I need to go, what place, what... They looked at the external situation. You know, which country has less police state, which economy will work better. I said, that comes later. First is the internal thing, then you choose in an informed manner. The external part of the story is that if you are in a place that you know is maybe not ideal in the next 5 to 10 years, and you become aware that you would like to live in a safer place, in a sense, you know, safer in many criteria of what can be safer. It could be the economy, it could be the noise in a big city, it could be that you prefer to come into an area like this one where we're now, where there's more peace of mind. Anyway, so you're then on an external search that can be taking a few months to find a place, can take a few years, because you've got to try it out. So someone asked me, what about real estate in the future? And I said, well, in the beginning you cannot commit because you don't even know if you're going to like it where you go to begin with. So you have to figure out. It will take you a year to, usually one says a year, 4 seasons to see one astrological cycle of the sun, just to get a feel for the place. So that's why we always say the best thing is just to rent a place, or maybe take a 5-year lease and check it out. The second reason why I advise clients not to buy now is because we feel, generally, at least here in the Western world, real estate is overvalued in our opinion, still massively overvalued. Really there's a potential that real estate will go still down by maybe half. It depends where, it's not a general rule, but so it's financially not interesting anyway to buy now. And the third reason why not to do it right now is that, let's say you have found your dream place, you know this is where I want to be, I like the neighbors, the economy, everything's fine, and you buy your place and then something external happens, who knows what, some event happens in your life and then, oh no, now I need to sell this place. And then you may be in the wrong moment to sell, because maybe the market went down, or because maybe it's just not going to happen, etc. And then you're stuck in the sense that you have a piece of real estate around your neck that there's like an anchor for you and doesn't let you really go to the next place easily. I mean, these are just examples. I'm just taking you a bit through the landscape of my clients and discussions. But this is all real life stuff that I'm talking about. It's not theory, okay? And so I'm saying the external change that comes after the internal change, or the awareness, I should say, that external situations are going to cause us to change with it. Let's say like waves that are going to just push you around this way and that way. We cannot control them, they're just going to happen. What we feel among the astrologers, and we're aware we have astrologers here, top astrologers, and we have top economy people and other experts, but there's a language difference. Some do not know astrology and some of course know it by heart, so I have to talk a language that everybody can understand. But we know, based on astrology, partly, and also based on real world observation, which is what I do better as an intelligence officer. I just look at the situation, observe it, measure it, and then decide what's the solution. We feel these changes that have started about, I would point to 2001, 15 years ago, the Saturn-Pluto opposition, that really initiated a big wave of change. Some of which is external due to events one can point to, that we don't need to repeat any book. But some of these changes, they're just sort of inscribed in time. They're just going to happen no matter what, whether we like it or not. And some of it is actually good stuff, and I'm going to talk mainly about the good stuff. Some of it will push us all in terms of mass awareness or mass consciousness. It's going to propel us into a new understanding of why we're actually here, what we're actually doing here. And this applies to anyone, whether you're an economist, a venture capitalist, a real estate person, a gold fund manager, a law firm, boss, an astrologer. It applies at all levels. But we have different understandings. I don't mean in levels of measurement, qualitatively, but with different ways of acting on the change that's coming. And most importantly also to begin with, we have different understanding, awareness of what it is actually about. And this is where there's a lot of debate, and that's understandable. If we would take an event, call it X, an event X, something has happened, an airplane went missing, or whatever, X, event X, then the discussion starts. What is this event about? Who made this happen? Why did this happen? And so it goes, thought. So immediately one has to learn, and I'm the biggest challenge to that, I have to learn to step out of my picture, step out totally, look at it from outside, and maybe even put the event X aside. Not that I pretend it doesn't exist, I know full well it's existing. And events, when I speak of events, are oftentimes what we call dynamic events. In other words, something that's still ongoing, that's still developing, or that has consequences everywhere, and ramifications into the economy, for instance, into real estate, into all sorts of practical things. And as we then ponder these things and what they mean to us, and what we can or cannot do about it, then we figure out, at least I came to some sort of internal conclusion, that there's a lot of stuff that is totally outside of our control. And that's fine, that's it, that's the first good observation, to accept what we cannot have any influence on. But we then find out our approach to the event X or situation Y, that we have control over. How do we internally and then externally approach, what's our attitude towards the event X or the situation Y? That's something that we can work on through many means. Of course, one is an internal education, just studying, reading up on things. Is it working over there? Good. And then we figure out the events can be a guide, literally showing us what to do about it internally. Now, you come maybe to a conclusion based on legal analysis, you come to a conclusion based on economic analysis. She will be told what to do. Others have an internal guidance who will say, okay, I understand the event, it means so and so, and now it's up to me to do something. First input is, I'll change your attitude about this, please. And then we step out the picture. You may think one day about it, one night. Maybe you need to study. Maybe you need to take a time out of a week. Whatever it is, and these can be events in your life, personal events or situations, or they can be massive global events. So what kinds of global events can we talk about? We feel, our team and I, the biggest issue, or if you want to call it a threat, in the longer term future are earth changes. Changes in climate, changes in the winds, floods, quakes, stuff that's going on. You see, the stuff that's going on is already our guide. The stuff that's going on is showing us already now what it's about. So I'm not here telling you like some seer or futurist, in 2045, because there's Uranus in Virgo, opposite Pluto in Pisces, therefore, and so on and so on. That be in the thought land again. And astrologers, we have to, of course, do analysis. But we can say, okay, we know the planets will do this and that, but we can understand that past and present and future is actually all one. So like I explained in my little booklet, when we take Uranus and Pluto conjunct together in Virgo in the early middle 60s, then let's look at the situation. What were the middle 60s about? When we go into it really deeply, like Krishnamurti said, not superficially, say, okay, we had credit cards exploding, the beginning of that, we had the space race starting, we had the situation with JFK. The mid-60s was a loaded time with Uranus and Pluto conjunct. The astrologers, of course, know Uranus is the big awakener, that presents you totally unexpected situations globally. Pluto is somewhat of a controlling force, but is mainly a transformer. So these two guys together initiated or mirrored the initiation of a total change in society. And now I need to take a step back, just quick, of something I did not write in the little booklet because I feel that's not for everybody to know. Now, and you may or may agree or disagree with me, but that doesn't matter. I'm not here to convince you of something, but my research, based on research of very informed sources, and also the astronaut who talked to me, shows that in the early 40s there was a technology transfer that began between, I would say, the American government at a military level, in relatively positive, neutral ways to begin with, and what I would just call now an outside force, or we could say a non-human force. I don't want to go into the details whether they were Greys or Anunnakis or forget all that, all the names. But it's documented that in 1939, beginning of Second War, 1941, very compartmentalized agencies were created that were non-disclosed compartments of what we today call the shadow government, and that was not known to any president or to any, that was leagues and leagues away from any knowing. And I'm talking technology. This has to do with time travel technology, it has to do with space travel technology, and it has to do with computing technology, with being able to push way more information into the minds of people and make way more technology available to the planet. So the long discussion and excursion in all this is that later in the late 70s, we had a lady called Doris Lessing. She was Nobel Prize winner in literature. She wrote a series of books known as the Canopus in Argos series, and of which 2 books, that's my personal feeling, 2 books, Shikasta and Syrian Experiments, describe in a fictional, although quite sort of hard-going manner, what she felt or what she was maybe told or taught what happened to this planet a long time ago. By the way, here where we are, we have over there in those hills, about a half-hour away, dolmens and stone structures that are clearly not human and that are clearly from a time so far away that the experts are out of luck. I mean, they can try X carbon, X whatever, and they come up with funny stuff because other civilizations later put stuff in it. So they measure that stuff and they say, oh, it looks like a burial site. So it's a fat joke. This probably was a time travel capsule or something else. Long story short, in the 1940s in the United States begins a very advanced transfer of technologies. I'm trying to speak in neutral terms. I'm not judging what I'm talking about. I'm just saying facts. I'm sharing facts. Right? I'm in the Intel office. I'm not going to tell you a fiction. And I'm not giving names to anybody. So just consider that in 1940, 41, 42, 45, under Truman then, begins a massive technology transfer between a force that we don't know much about. We know they have bases underground. They build very fast ships. They can fly to Mars now in a few days, and they do stuff. We know from John Lear they have maybe cities, but for sure bases on the other side of the moon. They have power stations. John Lear thinks it's nuclear. I think it's maybe something more advanced than nuclear. But anyway, we know now a lot more than we knew then. And in 1945, Truman and his gang start making deals with a force that is located maybe in Nevada, maybe in Utah, but later we find out they're really all over the place. They're also in Russia, they're also in China, they're really everywhere, in Japan. But mainly there is a strong connection between a not known defense force government in the US and that other force, that non-human force. By 1954, and this is documented, and you correct me if I'm wrong, President Eisenhower is said to have actually signed a treaty with those forces, or let's say his representative. Sometimes I shortcut things a bit, and forgive me if I've simplified because we're going to move a bit now for time. And so they sign actually a treaty with another race or another species, and say, okay, look, it's cool. We want your technology because we need to ramp up this humanity fast, right? You see that until 1940, there's no progress in this world. Everybody's more or less the same. But somewhere around 1955, 60, all of a sudden, whoa, there's a switch in technologies and awareness, and it can't just happen normally. So there was a clear input from outside. And some of which, for me, I'm a positivist, an optimist, Sagittarius rising. I see positive in it. But there were obviously other things that were of a more sinister nature, because the counterparty of the deal was, if I'm correctly informed, was research that the government was asked to let the other force do some, let's say, experiments of genetic engineering with some of the humans. That's the part of the story that's uncomfortable, as I'll move fast through it to skip it now. These deals were agreed upon, and there have been situations where people get missing, and all sorts of strange stuff happens, and that's just ongoing. You just need to know in the back of your head that stuff also exists. It doesn't have an impact on us. It's not actually relevant or important, but it's not something we should forget. Sometimes we have unexplained events that are going on where no scientists, no government people, no military intelligence, nobody can tell us really what it is. But the explanations of an event we're getting, anyone halfway intuitive can see, yeah, that doesn't make much sense, and anyway halfway very logical can say, no, I know that doesn't add up. And so when you have this situation, just remember what I just said now before, and just think maybe it belongs to that whole story. And that's about all we need to know about it. And so we move now to the 1960s, 70s. We begin now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a space race, where the Russians, the Americans, and others are saying, okay, let's go to the moon. And that comes the funny part of the story, which I had with my friend, the astronaut. I couldn't ask Dr. Mitchell, did you really go to the moon? That would be my friends who introduced me to him would have said, look, it's all behave yourself. Nor could I ask him, I trust you were there, I can see the stone you gave me, the stuff, the picture, I get it. But how did you get there? Now that question was not allowed, verboten, because that would imply that I said to him, who took you there? Because I cannot quite understand how you get into this tiny capsule and then they drop you on the moon and you lift off, and then, John Lear told us it's just not doable. It's just not in that time.
Not doable.
Not doable. Nicht machbar.
Yeah.
Das geht nicht. Mit der Technologie von 69, 71, das geht nicht. Das kann Ihnen der John Lear erklären. John Lear, I want to make a quick bracket about John Lear. And again, I'm talking to friends who know all of that and more. We're laughing about it. But I'm also talking to friends who may have never heard about this, and you may think, where's St.Clair taking you here? Okay, John Lear is the son of the Learjet founder, Bill Lear. John Lear, he was born in, I believe, 1942, in Santa Monica maybe. He was there anyway, in that area, and he's a Sagittarius. And as a son of the Learjet founder, what are you going to do? You just want to fly, right? So I was as a kid too, I said, I want to fly. They told me that in the military, nah, you're right, you're a cool intelligence officer, but no place for you. And the father of John Lear said, no way, this is crazy business, this flying stuff. You're going to get a lawyer, become a lawyer, like my dad said, become a lawyer or a doctor, do something intelligent with yourself. And John Lear said, no, I want to fly the stuff, I want to fly anything that flies. Long story short, John Lear became the pilot in the world with the most speed records, and he has flown basically anything that flies, except spacecrafts. He flew the fastest planes that they gave him, he flew commercial planes, and most importantly, he spent, I don't know exactly how much time, but a long time as a contract pilot for the firm. For the government, basically. He worked for the government. And so, due to his work as a pilot for them, he literally flew all around the world, all over the place. And so that gets you in contact with a lot of people, of course. And so he got to meet a lot of people, see a lot of situations. And when he flew his plane at night, he'd actually see funny stuff, like, pew! Oh, did you see that? No. Pew! Did you see it? So John Lear begins to become totally aware that this stuff that we're just talking about is very real. And he gets also his guidance, and he flies more, and he gets in touch with all sorts of interesting people, learning about underground bases, about how to build new crafts, how the technology transfer comes to the point where big American name firms, I don't want to mention the names, but it's defense industry, aerospace industry, etc., are working on simply very highly advanced stuff that is like 50 to 100 years. I'm not exaggerating, right? 50 to 100 years ahead of us.
1,000 years.
Huh?
1,000 years.
1,000 years. Seriously, they're building stuff that you can't even wrap your head around. And they can do time travel if they have to. They can certainly do space travel. They can certainly fly to Mars in much less time than can physically be explained. And so we know that there are energies, propulsion technologies, and I don't have the good language for it, but anyway, there are means at their disposal that our known science cannot even wrap their heads around. So what I'm saying is we're coming into a time from the 1960s to now and to the next 30 years, because these things take, by the way, 100 years to develop, to bring to mankind. We're going to come into a time when I said we will have a new physics taught to us. The physics that we know, the physics that the scientists teach at the best universities, that'd be like Boy Scout knowing compared to what these guys do. So there's going to be a totally new mind open to mankind, where they will be taught, oh, physics, time travel, wow, this is totally different. So I study other masters too. I want to make a quick other bracket. I study a man called John Rappaport, who has done a lot of investigations into a lot of things, secret space program, medicine, etc. And we will have new medicine, new science, new technologies, by the way, new travel technology, new energies. We're not going to depend on fuel and gas and nuclear stuff forever. But anyway, so we go into a time accelerating during the next 10 to 30 years, which is why sometimes we do have to mention 2045. Well, I'm just trying to give you the big picture as quickly as I can. I mean, I could talk to you for weeks on end about the stuff that we've studied, and I know we're laughing because there are a few here who have done this literally together with me for 10 years. One gentleman is quite older than me, who has already had this knowing maybe when I was just about 10 years old. Because this knowing was available. Someone who wanted to know stuff in the 1960s could actually access it. Of course, then it was in book form still, right? We were reading UFO books and we were reading strange phenomenon stories. But there's reality to this stuff. Then came the internet, where all of a sudden, boom, have it, it's open now. And then, of course, you have a lot of disinformation. You understand that, right? There's a lot of stuff being said that's complete garbage. And so we have to use our discernment. We get sometimes sidetracked, we spend a year in that direction to figure out, nah, that wasn't it. Then we go that direction. See, so it's again, you're going in thought land this way, you're going thought land that way. You need to always come back to yourself and sort of see, you know, has this any use to me? Has this any meaning? How do I see this? And then, to make this long story short, we now are in 2015. Sorry, I have to make a stopover in, sorry for that. I'll make one more quick stop that I showed some of you. In 1998, something quite unusual happens. The internet is now up. It's sort of working, it's still in the beginning phase. And a website comes up at the early stages, winter of 1998, that's called Wingmakers. Actually, it was wingmakers.com, but someone in the White House saw it, and I can say who that is. That was Fred Burks. Fred Burks was working for the State Department, and he was the translator of Bill Clinton, personal translator of Clinton and also Bush. He would travel with them to Indonesia, China, he speaks fluent Mandarin. And so Burks, just quickly to let you know, this guy saw a lot of stuff too, he knew stuff. And they tried to make him sign some secrecy agreements and stuff that he could never talk for the rest of his life about anything. And he said, look, that's crazy, I'm just a translator from the State Department. I'm out of here, see you back. And in '98, this website comes up, and he had the smarts to download it and put it safely on another site. The long story short of that site, I gave you the link. We know it as the Neruda interviews. This guy, Dr. Neruda, he had another name obviously. He was a linguist, scientist who worked in one of those highly compartmentalized and non-acknowledged compartments of the Department of Defense, actually NSA. But it was a sort of super secret shop called, and it had probably another name, but anyway, ACIO, Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization. And this guy, Neruda, was in a team that had found a very interesting ancient arrow site. They call it the ancient arrow site in Chaco Canyon in the United States. Actually, it was a bunch of young hikers who found the stuff. It was a structure inside of the canyon, in the walls, in the mountains. Anyway, in short, they found highly advanced paintings and technologies, and artifacts and discs, and they could measure, the scientists could measure that the site had been put on the map, hidden in the walls, in the caverns, with caves and caves, 23 chambers in it. And they measured it to be somewhere along the lines of, say, 1,000 years ago to 1,100 years ago, probably 9th century, they're not quite sure. That'd be like our Khazars here in Europe, about that time. I find that interesting. So during a time when the Native American Indians were there, an advanced, very advanced species or race of beings or whatever, time traveled into this planet. The story is true, okay, by the way, I'm not telling you now. I just want you to know I'm not wasting your time. So they find this stuff, and the boss of the unit of Dr. Neruda says, okay, this is beyond top secret. This doesn't exist. Bring the stuff here, we measure it out. We need to know what this is. And they figure out that probably it's a mixture between ancient, advanced, futuristic teachings, there's philosophy in it, art, paintings, music. Name the teaching of a future world, of a future mankind. They're coming from another time, which they can measure was put there 1,000 years ago, in short. It took them a while to decipher some of the stuff. It took them also a while to open up what amounted to very advanced technologies that would make our computers look pretty stupid. And at some point, anyway, Dr. Neruda was asked to check on more things. He was a linguist scientist, like I said, so he was very scientific. And he had to go back to this site and had to look at these paintings, had to decode stuff, because they wanted to know what was written there, what is this stuff for. Some part of their group thought it was more defense technology, some parts of now maybe more time travel technology, and other guys said, no, it's just teaching, it's philosophy, it's the future of, we're going to grow up here as a mankind. And it's a highly interesting story, that's why I spend another minute or two on it. And the guy Neruda, while studying the stuff, began to feel a presence. In short, he began to feel, these guys are for real, they're not three-dimensional, we can't touch them and say hi there, shake hands. But of course they are trans-dimensional, non-dimensional, but they were speaking to him somehow. They said, look, you Neruda, your job, your mission is, you need to let everyone know about this. And then he says, yeah, but my boss, he said, this is beyond top secret, I lose my job, they'll wipe my mind and stuff. No. So he gets into a conflict there, what should he do? As you know, he did what he thought the right thing, just put it out there on web and described what he had. He gave this interview to this lady, and in that interview he explained pretty much what happened, what was done, how they were working. And in the process of explaining everything, he also explained the entire makeup of certain parts of what we now know as, let's say, the undisclosed government. Can you hear me? Okay. And then later, two things happened. Well, first of all, his bosses, of course, they were not so happy about this because they were told the stuff was secret. Anyway, he defected, he left after he told this lady the stuff, and she wanted to have 1 or 2 more interviews with him, but he just had to leave. These guys, by the way, have the best remote viewer teams. They could locate him if they wanted to. They could do many things with his mind. So he basically set them out, and let her do so. She sent the whole stuff that she had, transcriptions, the discs, the drawings, the paintings, the music, everything, to some web guy, webmaster who used technology to pretty advanced. So they put the stuff on the web, and you know the rest of the story. But what then happened was the bosses said, well, it's not a problem, we're just going to add more to it. They couldn't do anything about it, it was out. So they just added more interviews, and a lot more philosophy, and a lot more teachings. They have found more stuff. And so nowadays, in 2015, those of us who saw the website 12 or 14 years ago, we figured out that there have been quite an important change in the anatomy, the morphology of the website. And it doesn't matter nowadays anymore which one was real, which one was added and stuff. But generally speaking, we are via those teachings in touch with something that we can actually look at, we can read it, we can hear it. There's music, paintings, philosophy books, novels, essays, and all of which is actually a pretty advanced, and I would say constructive nature. So that was that bracket, and that's why I gave you that. Now in it, in those Neruda interviews, he makes specific mention of their capabilities due to the high level of computing power. These transfers of technologies were, of course, between scientific think tanks, government think tanks, mainly defense, non-disclosed defense, aerospace industry also, very particular aerospace is involved in this. By the way, NSA had this department of the ACIO working together with aerospace, just like RAND Corporation today, which is somewhat associated with all this. RAND Corporation was formed by the Air Force people. Air Force was involved in getting RAND Corporation off the ground. So I'm giving you a bigger picture here of how everything kind of hangs together in the United States of, let's say, the 1950s, 60s to up to, say, 98, 2000. Then in 2001, things are starting to happen that look really strange on the face of it. You know, where scientists say, yeah, but you know, that plane can't really go through that thing, and that makes sense and stuff. There's a lot of strange stuff, and those of us who know what Neruda had told us, he had said, look, 2 things you need to understand, guys. This whole thing is one. With their technologies, they can command and control the global economy, the global defense, because the defense will be global, and basically global everything. And in particular, he makes mention of the fact that their technologies and high computing power and algorithms can actually do with the markets, gold, silver, any market, current steady cycles to 30,000. There it goes, in steady cycles, a flash crash of 5 minutes. There's nothing that they can't do. So you just have to understand that there are correlations of everything that we've studied